Good evening, spiritual warriors. Welcome to Classes Spiritual Warriorship, where we discuss and hear from His Holiness Bhaktivedanta Swami, who has written a number of we have six spiritual warrior books under his name, and there are 4 beggar books, meditation books, and 6 reflection books. We're studying spiritual warriorship. We've been on this path for a while, and I hope those of you who may have been traveling the path with us have found some practical ideas, concepts that can help you to advance spiritually or become stronger in your spiritual life or religious life just by hearing, because he certainly gives us very definite details in how to do that. And I hope that you found something from what you're hearing. We are working now from Spiritual Warriors 6, which is beyond fanaticism, terrorism, and war, to discover the peace solution. And all of us want a peaceful solution with all the stuff, if you will, that's going on. We are on chapter 4 in this particular book at this particular time. And as I've said before, all of Bhaktivedanta Swami's books are available at Krishna.com. And we're now on, as I said, Spiritual Warriors 6. So if you're able to get a copy and read along with us or read ahead of us, I feel it'll be very helpful. The section for tonight is 5 types of, he calls adharma, or irreligion. But before I go there, I'm just going to mention the titles of where we were before. I like to do review, but sometimes it takes us some time into good time for the new work. But the chapter is entitled Different Conceptions of Religion. And I'm going to put out a question. Chapter 4, Different Conceptions of Religion. If any of you who are in the chat room and have been hearing, or if you just heard last week's class, if there's some concept, perception, or something you heard that you were able to think on more deeply or go more deeply or share with someone, I would like, if you are able or up to it, to put that comment out, just to get an idea of what may be going on in your mind and consciousness, or if this is helping at all. Although I've decided to follow what in the Bhagavad Gita, to not be overly concerned about the results of the service, and this is the service to my spiritual master. So let's quickly go through, and maybe by mentioning the titles of the sections that we covered, it may awaken something in you or remind you of something. And if you feel to share it when we get to the sharing section, I'd appreciate that. All right? Now, I like the way he opens this chapter on different conceptions of religion, the analogy he gives. And he says that in one sense, religions are like vehicles that people choose to ride in according to their nature. The vehicle is not as significant as its ability to carry you where you need to go. It is unfortunate when people want to push other drivers off the road, or cannot appreciate another driver who has a different car. Of course, some vehicles just do not function properly at all, and others look very good but still have trouble because they are not kept up properly. However, if we have a good vehicle and continue to move along the road, we will progress towards the destination. Do you get that? Isn't that a wonderful analogy of thinking how religions are like vehicles? At first, we went through quickly researching the goal of theology. And there we were reminded that there are many different religious traditions, and they have different conceptions of God and different practices, and I'm sure you'll agree with that. And he mentioned before choosing a car or choosing your destination. He says here, when we choose to follow a teaching, we want to find out if we do in fact feel comfortable with all aspects of the theology. And do you remember what he did? He gave us 3 questions that can help us make a clear evaluation. Anybody remember the questions? Ooh, thank you. All the hands went up. I just can't hear you. You can write them down if you like. The first is, what is the ultimate goal of the system? The second is, what must we do to reach that goal? And finally, the third question, do we feel comfortable with what those who have authentically, or I like that word in there, remember, authentically followed the goal obtained? Good questions wherever you are on your path of spirituality, religiosity. The next we went through we looked at 2 types of religious practitioners, remember? There's the external practitioner, and they're the ones who get caught up in the externals. They're more into what? Rituals, dress, dogma. And that's where many fanatics are created. The second type is the internal practitioner. And what do you think happens there? Those practitioners are focused on the essence of the religion, and they do not get distracted by the ritual or the dress or dogma or other details. Then we discussed 4 types of motivated worship. But what he told us there are 4 reasons why people engage in worship of God. 3 types of motivated worship and 1 type of genuine worship. See the difference? And the 3 types, 1 is worship out of fear. That means that people serve the Lord in order to avoid suffering in hell. But this type of worship involves more fear than knowledge of the higher realities. The second is conditional worship for material aspirations. Many people only think about God when they want some material pleasure or commodity. instead of entering into a relationship with God in order to love and serve Him, they're mainly invoking the Lord's presence so that He can act as their servant. Sounds familiar to some people, I'm sure you know. But we must be careful with that. And the knowledge, as he mentioned, we need the knowledge so that we know who we are as His servant. And those types of people simply invoke the Lord when they want sense gratification or need some obstacle removed from their lives. The third type of worship, serving out of duty. Now in this case, people serve according to the rules and regulations propounded in the scriptures. And the scriptures tell us what to do as well as what to avoid. Regulations which one should follow until they rise to the more spontaneous level. So these are necessary to help us develop a deeper internal connection. So we can't avoid that essential foundation. And the fourth is, which is what he calls the genuine. Those are all motivational types of worship. And then the fourth, he said, was genuine, which is worship out of genuine attraction. And here he speaks again of love. Love means that the lover goes out of his or her way for the beloved, because he or she genuinely wants to honor the beloved's presence. And the ultimate goal of all bona fide religion, spirituality, is to reach the goal of love of God. So he tells us here, the soul is full of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. And self-realization does not mean that we have to learn who we are. Rather, he says, it means uncovering our actual identity by freeing ourselves of superfluous involvement in our lives. Okay? Now, this is tonight's class, I believe. Yeah. No, we did this the last time. Okay, quick review. I have to catch up with myself sometime. So what we're looking at tonight, differences between religious traditions. No, we did do this last week. Anybody remember? The first one is a difference in teachers. Now this addresses the fact that people of various faiths have particular saints, prophets, and acharyas whom they adore and abide by. The next is difference in worshippers' mentality and expression of reverence. Now here, mentality refers to a psychological disposition, often infused by a person's culture or inherent to a particular religious tradition, which in many cases relates to the culture from which the tradition originated. And cultures carry certain patterns of mentality and mood. 3, differences in method of worship. Here, people worship in many different places, such as temples, mosques, churches, or even on mountains. Obviously, these places just make up some of the external differences. For people who are not grounded in their own tradition, these differences are a source of confusion. Here I think it's important to remember he tells us that differences that come together around a strong nucleus of love. Have you noticed love is a factor, very important factor. A strong nucleus of love and understanding engender unity. To be love, for unity. While differences lacking this nucleus move us toward greater differences and conflicts. And the last difference in the conceptions and conventional actions concerning the object of worship. Sometimes religionists believe that there is only one process, one prophet, or one Son of God, which is quite an elementary understanding. Okay, he states also, that there are also different notions surrounding the form of the Lord, especially in terms of how his form can be approached by us in worship. These differences stem from different conceptions of the Lord. Okay, I want to get to the subject matter for tonight, and we have one more difference. Differences in God's names and teachings due to linguistic differences. Every great theology comes with a scripture or teaching to disseminate knowledge. And it comes with an acharya or sons and daughters of God who are very instrumental in propagating the philosophy. The messengers who have distinct personalities come in specific types of bodies to certain parts of the world. They speak a language and may use different names to address the Lord. But in spite of these differences, we see that most theistic traditions encourage followers to call on the name of the Lord. And we went into depth with that last week, all the different scriptures and how they remind us to call on the names of the Lord. Because if we deeply examine all the various religious traditions, we will see an emphasis on the power of mantra and an emphasis on how sound affects individual consciousness along with the collective environment. And it is often people who minimize the importance of these universalities due to a difference in form and other external factors. And yet, calling on the name is a universal known. So, tonight we're going to look at 5 types of irreligion, or he calls them adharma. Number 1 is called vidharma, and it refers to irreligious concepts and actions that hinder a person's spiritual advancement. And isn't that why we get into spirituality? We seek spirituality. We seek reason because we want to advance. And we have to really gain the knowledge for that advancement. Now, this, of course, causes individuals to not get the full benefit of following their respective religions. Excuse me. Number 2, Paradama refers to religious principles concocted by others that create some contamination and adulteration. These principles have entered whimsically and weakened the potency of the process. Religion. What does religion mean? Anybody want to put an answer out there real quick? What does religion mean? Anybody answer? Real quick. No answers? You thinking about it? No answers? Okay. You're thinking on it? What does religion mean? Religion means to follow the laws given by God. But sometimes people speculate and then introduce their own philosophies and so-called religious principles. And what is this? That's the Paradama. Religious principles concocted. Number 3, Dharmabhasa, or pretentious religion. And that occurs when a pseudo-religious practice is adopted whimsically by people who willfully abandon their prescribed duties. Now, according to their social and spiritual stations in life, people have certain responsibilities. Those who abandon them, adopting a pseudo-religious practice to suit their whims, only create what? Confusion and chaos. Number 4, Upadama, or heretical religion, is a faction of a bona fide religion created by people taken away by false pride. These factions appear plausible but are actually fallacious. And number 5, Chala Dharma refers to a cheating religion in which people use a bona fide religion to meet their own ends. This is often a matter of business and politics in the name of religion, or to push one's own ideas. So I hope you're thinking, there's so much of this going on, or has been going on, and what he's trying to do is bring us to a place of knowing who we are, and that love is important in our relationship with God. He now speaks about spiritual guides, manifest and unmanifest. Now, all of these different approaches to religion also affect people's understanding of spiritual teachers and guides. We must remember that we are never alone on the spiritual path. Never alone on the spiritual path. There are always personalities helping us to advance and guiding us in the right direction. And I'm sure that's not a strange statement from what little girl. I remember hearing about angels are always there, and lot on that. Angels or, guides. We've heard it. We've heard it throughout. I have anyway, and I'm sure most of you have heard that. So just as some teachers come in a physical form, there are many yogis and teachers who never enter the physical form. We can only see them if we have higher vision. Now, although higher beings have at times come into this particular realm to interact in this material world, they no longer appear as frequently. The planet became more sinful after the departure of Lord Buddha, and consequently, many higher beings did not feel comfortable coming into the environment saturated with destruction and devastation. People are now engaged in all types of sectarianism and superficialities. However, someone on this planet who has a higher level of consciousness will not have any problem seeing or interacting with such entities when they come through. Higher level of consciousness. And that's what we've hopefully been about and going, sharing these spiritual warrior books with you and the concepts presented by His Holiness Bhaktitirtha Swami. It's to help you know who you are as a spiritual being and how to know that and use that for dealing with everyday situations and getting to that higher level of consciousness. And He is telling us, as we do, such higher entities can come and help us and or be here for us. He states that very powerful rituals and sacrifices do not involve the people who are physically present. The purpose is to assist those who are present while simultaneously calling forth and honoring others in higher realms. And we want to do that so that they may come due to the potency of the particular ritual. Usually in our Vaishnava community and in our temples, after the ceremony is over, the Parama Divini prayers, or the closing prayers after the ceremony is over, what is it saying? All glories to the assembled devotees. How many times you've been in the temple and you've participated in that prayer and you've made that statement, all glories to the assembled devotees. He tells us here that we are offering at that time respects to those in attendance and hopefully to those who have come due to the potency of the ceremony. The higher beings do not necessarily manifest physically unless we have the vision to see. What's that in the Bhagavad Gita? Arjuna, the Lord gave him the vision to see. As we also hear in the Bible, we have a physical form as well as a spiritual form. And although we might only have the capacity to perceive material forms, we should not consider that nothing exists beyond those forms. We think this because we are using our materialistic perspective in the realms below to analyze the realms above. What is that? As above, so below, it states somewhere. But it's perverted on the below because we've lost contact with the higher. Now, none of us are defined by the costumes we wear. We have so many designations while we remain in these bodies. But we are none of these designations. Why? Because the soul is completely separate from any material body. Labels. The soul is eternal. The Bhagavad Gita, he quotes here from chapter 2, verse 20. Krishna said, "For the soul there is neither birth or death at any time. He has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. The soul is eternal." So we are all eternal beings, that soul within us. That's the expression you hear if you've been around. You're not the body, you're more than the body. And as we get that understanding, it's something to strive for, and I get it. If you're reading Bhagavad Gita or any of Prabhupada's books, it's stressed. Bhakti-tirtha Swami, almost every book, every section, he reminds us of who we are as eternal beings. And that's the beginning of the knowledge, so that we don't get stuck in this material conception of I, me, mine. So in one sense, we're all extraterrestrials. How do you like that? Because no entities permanently reside in this material universe. No. Any entities, they come to go is an expression I use. It's temporary here. We are simply in transit. The soul does not stay in these environments eternally. Therefore, it is just a matter of how recently we have come and how ready we are to leave. These subjects only seem extraordinary because people try to understand the spiritual realm through mundane references and perspectives. Being absorbed in the normative patterns of material life, spiritual truths seem imaginary and unreal. Nevertheless, spirituality has always been full of adventure, excitement, and transcendental personal relationships. So if you're riding the fence about should I go deep into spiritual life, come on! Join the battlefield here. Join the spiritual warriors and find out how, and study and associate with other spiritual individuals and begin to know you can reach a higher state of consciousness and understand, as he said, that spirituality has always been full of adventure, excitement, and transcendental personal relationships. And that's when you know who you are and what is your relationship with the Supreme and each other, and that love he talks about so often begins to manifest. The next is personalism versus impersonalism. We're going to look at that because we just finished stating that spiritual life has been full of adventure and transcendental personal relationships. So we're going to see how that impersonalism versus personalism is brought out. He states, as we deepen our examination, we will also discover that people have different conceptions of God, which sometimes stem from their own experiences. Some people think of God as being free from variegatedness. They feel that the ultimate state of God consciousness involves a type of nirvana, void of a relationship and heterogeneity. Now, other people conceive of God as an expression of universal intelligence or ultimate divine light. And I know in the 60s and 70s of my search in spirituality, that was very popular then. God is the light, and find the light and go into the light. And I know I was studying Science of Mind. It was, what was that? God's mind is my mind, or my mind is God's mind. And we knew there was an intelligence, but it was still, we were thinking that we were it, or we were so much a part of it. And there wasn't any individuality, which we'll see. So some people are connected with systems and practices that allow them to experience a cosmic consciousness or samadhi. This is when you focus intensely and go into trance, focusing on the Supreme Lord and how to serve Him. Now, such systems might lead to an experience of oneness with all that is, or a feeling that they are all that is. Others feel that the ultimate connection with God involves their ability to honor mortality and ethics. Yet, other people see God through objects in their environment, such as trees, the moon, the sun, animals, and so on. I remember going through that stage. I didn't know God is a person, and the sun, the trees, it was, this is all God. He goes on stating, then there are those who try to connect with the Godhead in order to experience divine personality and divine variegatedness. Now that sounds kind of exciting, doesn't it? Material relationships are temporary, whereas spiritual associations are not limited. The spiritual reality is actually creating the material objects and activities. The material realm is merely a reflection of the permanent and eternal. Remember we said, as above, so below. But it's just a reflection because of the material energy. And as above, it's all spiritual, all focus, the object is love of God. For instance, if you look in a mirror, you only see a reflection because of the existence of the original form that's in front of the mirror. Many of the mystery schools and various theologies seem to take on more of an impersonal aspect. However, if we look more scrutinizingly, we will begin to observe that everything, when studied, has characteristics or specific attributes. But he says when we begin to look more scrutinizingly, and that if you're interested in your spiritual life or you have a sense that there's something more or something higher, you do begin to examine with great scrutiny. In one sense, there is no such thing as impersonal energy. Why? Because even a drop of water, a neutron, or a light wave has specific qualities, relationships, and forms. Now, if we take a drop of water and look at it very closely, we will see how it's comprised of small parts that are variegated. The parts attract, unite, repel, and so on. It seems almost like an oxymoron. I meant to look that up. Oxymoron. Anybody out there know what that is? I had it down to look in the dictionary and I got carried away. I can't put a meaning to it. So I know you intelligent, bright personalities out there going along with this word for word. Oxymoron. From one perspective, something might seem void of relationship. From one perspective. But whatever exists must be interacting and relating to other objects in the environment. Anything that exists must have some type of dharma or essence. Otherwise, it does not exist. Therefore, the idea of impersonalism is just a conceptual consideration, since it doesn't actually mean anything. Write a statement there for those who are into impersonalism. The earth itself is a living entity, along with the sun, moon, and galaxy. Even our physical bodies could compare to a universe, along with the dominant consciousness that we call our identity. Within a person's body are hundreds and thousands of life forms. In the human body, there are hundreds and thousands of life forms, cells, germs, etc. And if you've ever looked in a microscope for one drop of something anywhere, you know what that means. Of course, physical bodies are relative according to size and duration of life. For an ant to walk across what we consider a small room might compare to miles for the insect. size, duration, and longevity are all relative. For the little germ, our body is indefinable. There's a statement.
Definition of oxymoron.
Oh, yes.
A phrase in which two words of contradictory meaning are used together for a specific effect. Example, wise fool or legal murderer.
Huh. The parts attract, unite, repel, and so on. It seems almost like oxymoron. Okay, read that one more time, just a plain.
A phrase in which two words of contradictory meaning are used together for specific effect.
Okay. Thank you. Who sent that? You don't know? Okay. Thank you very much. You're paying attention. I like that. More help from that. Okay. So he's telling us here that we, as living entities in association with Mother Earth, are very minute. Huh? But so many of our activities are polluting and rupturing this planet. We are rupturing the earth by nuclear tests, toxic water, landfills, and even improper thoughts and mindsets. We are creating many disturbances on the planet. No wonder we have an increase in earthquakes, huh? Hurricanes, huh? Tornadoes and famines. I don't know when he had this class and said, but just recently with these high mega earthquakes, just Haiti, and now that last one was in Chile. And we've been talking, and it's like Mother Earth is sick and tired of being polluted and abused. And she is responding, and this is what he's telling us, that Mother Earth is a living entity, and that we've been rupturing her and misusing her and abusing her. He says, just as our bodies will misfunction if we abuse it long enough, the earth also reacts to our constant abuse. And isn't she? The snowstorms this winter, my son who lives in New York was saying they've had the most this year there was the most accumulation of snow in New York. I don't know, since New York was. It sounded like that's what he said, in a very long time. And across the country, the different storms and winds and high snow. It's been a horrific time. And as he says, our bodies have a natural way to fight off intrusions, germs, and attacks. And Mother Earth, as an individual personality, also has a natural way to fight off sickness. And it's good to hear this, and maybe we forget that Mother Earth is a living entity, that the energy of the Lord, the Supreme Lord, is in everything. And just as He's within us too, as he said. Our bodies have a natural way to fight off intrusions. So Mother Earth is showing her disturbance. He says that in 1998 alone, tens of thousands of people died and millions were displaced due to earth changes. That was in 1998. How many people more have gone now to 2010? We see such catastrophes all over the world. As long as we continue to abuse living organisms, we will get corresponding results. Now we find more people suffering from such ailments as heart disease and cancer, which also stem from the abuse of our physical and subtle presence. We will get various types of reactions. The unhealthy bombardment in the atmosphere are weakening our immune system. He tells us we need to be much more conscientious in taking care of ourselves, especially considering the hundreds of thousands of life forms connected with our bodies. When we take proper care of our bodies, we are not only giving better attention to every organ and cell, but we are giving care to the many other forms of life inside of our bodies. Have you thought of that? For instance, our cells are alive. And in every atom, there is the presence of the supersoul. The way we treat the physical body is also the way we treat and relate to all the variegated life forms within the physical shell. And he gives a quote here that I want to share with you. A Dr. John Cleveland Cotran, formerly a professor of chemistry and the chairman of the Science and Mathematics Department at the University of Minnesota. He supports this personal view. Remember, we're looking at personalism and impersonalism. He wrote an article, The Inescapable Conclusion. And it's interesting, when I read this, I decided I'm going to Google this and see if I could bring it up to share with some of my younger family members. In fact, one nephew of mine, I don't stay in touch with him too much, but he had been in the hospital, and I called to see how he was doing and coming along. And I had also sent him a copy of Back to Godhead, the issue about evolution and Darwin theory. So when I was talking, I hadn't heard a response. So when I was talking to him, I said, "Did you get the magazine I sent you?" "Oh, yeah, I got it." "Did you read it?" "No, I haven't." I said, I just got my new issue, and I see people who are responding to that article. It really helped them. And I said, I think I mentioned to him it was about evolution and Darwinism. And I thought I heard him say, "Oh, yeah, Darwin's my man," or something like that. Well, I didn't faint or pass out. And I was very compassionate. Is that what I'm wearing? Compassionate. I'm trying to learn. And I said to him, "Well, do me a favor. I know you haven't been feeling well, but it seems now you have an opportunity. You need to rest," because he had a hip replacement. "You need to rest and be quiet. Try to take some time to read that so you can expand maybe your understanding." And I left. We finished our conversation, and I really plan to get back in touch with him, and I'm trying to think which Prabhupada book I should send to him first, But yeah, we get so, I guess, complacent in our material life, and even though we may be saying we're on a spiritual path or endeavoring or we're practicing, So we really, as he's been telling us, you have to get to the essence for the truer understanding, and then we'll know more about who we are. So this professor states, chemistry discloses that matter is ceasing to exist. Some varieties exceedingly slow, others exceedingly fast. Therefore, the existence of matter is not eternal. Consequently, matter must have had a beginning. Evidence from chemistry and other sciences indicate that this beginning was not slow and gradual. On the contrary, it was sudden, and the evidence indicates the approximate time when it occurred. Thus, at some rather definite time, the material world was created, and ever since has been obeying law, not the dictates of chance. Now, the material realm not being able to create itself and its governing laws, the act of creation must have been performed by some non-material agent. The stupendous marvels accomplished in that act show that this agent must possess superlative intelligence and attributes of mind. But to bring mind into action in the material realm, as for example in the practice of medicine and the field of parapsychology, the exercise of will is required. And this can be exerted only by a person. There goes the Big Bang theory, right? Hence, our logical and inescapable conclusion is not only that creation occurred, but that it was brought about according to the plan and will of a person, as a capital P, endowed with supreme intelligence and knowledge, omniscience, and the power to bring it about and keep it running according to plan, omnipotence. Always and everywhere throughout the universe, omnipresence. That is to say, we accept unhesitatingly the fact of the existence of the supreme spiritual being, God, the creator and director of the universe. Now, this was an article that was written by a professor of chemistry and chairman of the science and math. Now, of course, if we've been reading Bhagavad Gita, if we've been on a spiritual path and hearing Srila Prabhupada reading his book, Srimad Bhagavatam, we would be able to even go deeper than this. But I found that quite interesting, and the way it's written to share with those who are still thinking, a lot of what we talk about is mythology. So, it's getting near our time. Just let me bring this to a close. As we go deeper into orthodox religions and deeper into mystery schools, we will constantly find more of a personal connection. Just consider how any relationship functions. If you do not know me or do not see me as a valuable person, you will treat me impersonally. Similarly, if we do not study theology deeply, we will have a general understanding of our relationship with God. Generally. But the closer we look, the more we will understand. The closer we look. So again, this is saying, use your time wisely, use your mind wisely, intelligently. If you're seeking spiritual life, a spiritual path, even whatever religion you're in and study, he's saying, study deeply. Seek for answers, and the Lord within will guide you to answers. Because we don't want a general understanding of our relationship with God. We want a deep sense of knowing our relationship with God. And the more closer we look, the more we'll understand. He gives an example here that we might see a beautiful building from afar. We've heard this in our mountain from afar. But as we reflect more closely on the intricate design of the building as a creative expression, we can either just look at the manifestation or look to see what is really behind the creation. This type of research will always bring us back to a personal level. Because just seeing the building, and as you look at the detail, it couldn't put those details by itself. There had to be a person. Not only are the minutest details personal, but the grandest phenomena are personal as well. We can also find glimpses of higher knowledge in some of the mystery schools, such as Grail movement, Eckankar, Theosophy movement. Ekis follows of Eckankar have a book entitled The Flute of God by Paul Twitchell. I once inquired from one Eckankar master about this book. They say the highest experience is to hear the ultimate sound, which is that of the flute of God. I then asked for more knowledge of the flute and about the player of the flute. Wouldn't you? There was silence because the knowledge stopped at that point. However, if there is a flute or a sound, someone has put the sound into motion. A spiritual sound is not put into motion by a material being or force, but by a spiritual influence. Therefore, the knowledge and science of this spiritual personality, the Supreme Lord, is the ultimate goal for the spiritual warrior. I'm going to close there tonight. Next week we will go to personalism as the ultimate conclusion. I get fascinated by reading. Any questions, any comments, any realizations, any I want to use the phrase deeper understanding, any desire to go back and read your religious books and your spiritual books that you may have put aside for a while, and we all do that, and I'll get back to you later, I'll get back to this later, next week turns into next month and then into next year. But this is what he's telling us. We have to go deeper and study more deeply to get to the essence, to truly understand our purpose for being here and the meaning of life and our connection with the source of all sources. So, as I said, I'm closing. I thank you for being there. Any of our friends there?
Yes. There are a lot of people online right now.
Yeah.
Kremlin says that, Namaste, Mother, just letting you know that I was listening. Very good topic last few sessions. And Bhakti,
Kremlin. And where's Kremlin again? In the Middle West? Somewhere. Okay, you know I like to know where you are. So that's part of the old lady here. Thank you for being there. Who else?
And Bhaktin Shruti says, great session, thank you. And Karuna Shakti says, thank you so much. Hare Krishna. And Bhuvan Mohan says, wonderful class, Mother Indrani. Great points. Indicating the personalist, theistic perspective. Thank you, and Hare Krishna.
Thank you, and thank you, Shruti. I mean to write to you and respond, but thank you for being there, and thank you for hearing and responding so nicely.
Bhaktin Carol says, your attitude and enthusiasm is enlivening.
Oh, Bhaktin Carol, thank you for being there. Thank you for your comment. Just knowing that you're out there makes it exciting, and I want to be more enthusiastic and just to encourage all of you and myself to continue growing and developing a deeper relationship with the Supreme. Thank you for coming. Anybody else we know?
Karuna Shakti's from BC, Canada.
Who?
Karuna Shakti.
Oh,
And
British Columbia.
Kremlin is from Texas.
All right, Kremlin is Texas, and British. Thank you for being there. And I hope you'll get the book if you don't have it. If you do have it, reread some of this or read ahead and just see how you're doing on your spiritual path, and you'll be excited and enthusiastic also. Okay, thank you all for coming, spiritual warriors on the battlefield. And as we encourage each other and support each other, this is what it's about, to reach the ultimate goal of a spiritual warrior, aiming for the ultimate goal, love of God. See you next week. Hare Krishna.